Morning, everybody. Matt Stein, Matt Darrell, the Guru Johnson with you on a Thursday.
Going up on a Thursday. Norm just texted me, thought we were off because it's 10:05. I said, no, we started 10. Norm just
if you want to take a shot at Bonte and Shasky, take a shot at Bonte and Shasky.
Those
Don't go
are my
through
brothers.
Norm.
Oh, boy.
Don't go through Norm.
10-18. Right. What's up, baby?
Not much. So it's funny because the Super Bowl was Sunday. It's Thursday now. And it's one of those things where over the course of a week, man, Goo, a lot of stuff has come out. The boss came up to me and Evan and you and said, guys, think about this for a minute. Since the Super Bowl, Steve Wilks was fired. You had Feliciano and Burford going at it on Twitter. Bosa said we weren't prepared for the run-pass option. Ayuk's family's making some noise about his future. Juszczyk said he didn't know the rule about overtime, and some other players didn't. And then he threw this one in there that after the Chiefs lost the coin toss but realized that they were going to kick off anyway, that the Chiefs kind of laughing during the coin toss was another thing. So we got Warriors to talk about, and we will.
Oh,
but I guess my question to 49er fans is, now that we've kind of had a week or two, 5 days, what bothers you the most right now, and was it different than what bothered you an hour after the game? Because
wow,
I mean, I'll throw you my thoughts,
okay.
And then you tell me what you think.
Go ahead.
I watched the game, and in the immediate aftermath of the game, I said, you know what? They didn't quite play well enough. I thought they just didn't do enough to a man. It was a close game. They had so many chances. 1 or 2, 3 plays go different, all that stuff. But now it's Thursday, and I'm thinking, I think it was a big mistake to take the ball in overtime. That's one that I'm thinking, you know what? The more I think about that, the more it's becoming, I don't want to say obvious because there's always going to be a gray area on those, Goo. But I think that was a mistake.
Okay.
Did it cost them the Super Bowl? I can't make that leap from A to B, but it didn't help. And I guess that's the one thing that kind of gets me on Thursday is the overtime was something that was kind of significant, but I feel like Shanahan is glossing over it. And yesterday he said something like, yeah, it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter at that point. You know what? With all due respect to Shanahan, that's where I want a coach to say, you know what? We thought we did it right. Maybe if that situation comes up again, we'll take another look at it. And maybe we'll do the same thing, but maybe we won't. Why can't he do that?
Possibly.
I guess that's what, and I'm not here to say he needs to be fired or anything like that, but dude,
I love it.
Just say, you know what? Maybe next time we do something a little different. Does anybody out there think Kyle Shanahan would do anything different if they had the Super Bowl tomorrow?
I'm going to tell you this because I got so much. I just processed what you said. I appreciate it. And after the game in real time, Steiny,
yep,
there was growth from your partner because I really had I don't want to say antagonist. I had nobody on my list that stood out more, or I was ready to come here and blow the house down and say, oh, such and such cost him the game, some more than others. But I will say with what's going on and what happened yesterday after hearing Kyle say about Steve Wilks and all his coaches, Steiny, you tell me if I'm wrong here. There's a greaseball element coming from Kyle Shanahan that's not sitting well with me. And let me tell you why. We all saw the turbulence, if you really had that vision, that X-ray vision with Steve Wilks and this Niner defense. But to say you needed time in the lab to think about coaches coming back and to come to that conclusion yesterday that fast, there's the greaseball part of it for me, partner, is I feel like you announced it when you maybe could have waited 2 weeks, but you announced it in a way to where I feel like subliminally Kyle Shanahan was saying, we lost the Super Bowl because of our defense. And from my vantage point, I could totally be wrong. I don't like it. And my runner-up, I know you didn't ask, is Bosa. How the hell are you not on the field for every play in overtime and in the fourth and step to the mic and say what it is? You were not fond of Steve Wilks and the calls he was making, and let that be it. You got that gravitas. You get the 100 milli, but to come out and say we weren't prepared for everything, we're good on the backside, that's what I don't like. But those would be my top two. But I'm going to ask you and the listeners, 888-957-9570, has anything since Sunday transpired from a Kyle Shanahan standpoint to where you like him less? And is that fair, Steiny? Because we're taking calls left and right. They kind of, something's changed a little bit.
Well, for me, it's not liking him less or more, but, I mean, maybe the questions come more frequently. Maybe the skepticism is more in abundance. I mean, he's had an unbelievable amount of success without winning the big one. Do you think he can't win the big one? If you don't think he can win the big one, then we do have to make some decisions, you would think. If you think that he's a hell of a coach, that he's going to break through, well, then to me, there's really not a lot of decisions to be made. I'll say this. Here's what I actually do believe.
All right.
Wilks is a scapegoat, but I also agree, I don't think he was a good fit because I don't think he got the most out of the defense, and I do think I don't think the players were crazy about Wilks. But I actually come at it from the other way. I'll bet you if you ask Kyle Shanahan, I'll bet you he would tell you, you know what, we should have fired Steve in the middle of that losing streak. I bet you if he had it to do over again, he would have fired Wilks in the beginning of in the middle of the year because now, isn't it obvious they weren't on the same page?
No,
there was something not clicking.
Yeah.
And it lasted the whole season, and they both kind of lived with each other, but they weren't crazy about each other, and Kyle threw him under the bus, and maybe things changed at that point for even the worse. But I'll bet you Kyle Shanahan kind of wishes he would have seen what would happen if he cut the cord. At the moment, he had doubts, which let's say was after the 3-game losing streak.
No, I'm not mad at that at all, and let me tell you why that might not have been a bad idea, because I was going to look at you not knowing what I'm about to share with you and say, well, that wouldn't work, Steiny. Who the hell would call the defense? But there's sound here we can play where Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator, to me, defensive coordinators implement their system. It's their algebra. And for Steve Wilks to say, I'm still learning the system and principles, I'm paraphrasing, somebody else was doing something or had input too, Steiny. So that shook me to my core that this man's in a defensive coordinator position, and yet it's not your baby. It's not your math. It's not your fractions. So that was alarming in itself. I don't know if we had that, Steiny. Do we have that sound?
Which one?
The Steve Wilks saying he's still learning the system.
Take a listen. This is after the Vikings
It's your system.
Game.
It's always challenging when you've done your own thing for 17 years. It's a little different, but I'm encouraged. I got a great supporting cast. These coaches that are around me are phenomenal. They know this defense. They know their craft. These players are great. So we're all in this together, man. So I'm not hitting the panic button at all.
Oh, no. It's interesting, Steiny. And my last thing, Mark Willard. I can shout out to Dibs and Willard. So if you don't think Wilks is a scapegoat, it still falls at Kyle's feet, just as Mark said, Willard, because he hired him, Steiny.
Yep.
You got to have the foresight to know if it's going to mesh in jail. So I'll say this about Kyle. Do I think he should be fired? No. Am I more skeptical? This is the most doubt now that I have that he can win the big game that plays out the way it did. That took a hit. But, Matt, what do? He's got so much power, he's almost untouchable.
Well, I don't think there's anything to do. You go out and hire a defensive coordinator, and you come back and do the best you can with the players you have, most of whom will be back from this team. The question I asked at the start of the show was 4 or 5 days after the Super Bowl, what's bothering you the most? And here's what's bothering me the most.
This is something we talked about with, none of us have a ton of experience of it, but we went through all the analytics and talked with those guys, and we just thought it'd be better. We wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go win, and we got that field goal, so we knew we had to hold them to at least to a field goal, and if we did, then we felt it was in our hands after that.
No.
Good gosh.
I'm not on board with that one.
Can I give you an analogy, and I'm a bad one, and
Yeah.
I'll pass it right back?
Yep.
I want to have children. You got to get a girlfriend first. You know what I mean?
Well,
you can't. What are you talking about? Third.
Adopt.
Evan, where's first, second, Fedoni? Third. That's entitlement that you might. You know what I mean?
You could just hit a walk-off.
Here's the other thing that that hit me about Shanahan. It's obvious. I mean, this one I think we have to acknowledge. And maybe 99 out of 100 games, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs were exceedingly more prepared for an overtime game than the San Francisco 49ers. And here's what I was thinking about. So here's what we know. The Chiefs had been talking about that all year long. Let's say 4 months. 4+ months. Hey, I know it's down the road, but if. And by the time it came up, they knew if it happens, we're deferring. We're deferring. They all year long they talked about it and got more and more affirmed that if this situation were to come up, they would take the ball second. Okay? Now let's go to Kyle Shanahan. They didn't deal with this till the playoffs. Then he told the assistant coaches to talk to the players and make sure they knew the rules. But I think that the Chiefs used 4 months of data and decided this is the best way to do it. We must defer if we win the toss to give Patrick and our team a chance at the very end. Shanahan did not prepare for that moment for 4 months. He prepared for it much less than that, and the data he used wasn't as comprehensive. And he fixated maybe or thought the most important part of that was, well, who gets it third? Well, who gets it? I mean, there's part of me that goes, who gets it third? Yeah. Might not be a third. But that's where I think the 49 and the fact that the Chiefs players during that toss were so gleeful and that they were incredulous that the 49ers were not not deferring.
Man.
Like it almost gave them confidence. Like they walked off after the coin toss. Like, this is unbelievable. We lost the toss, but we still get we got momentum. Exactly. So that's the part that just I don't know. I wish Kyle would look at that a little bit differently and at least say, "Oh no, everybody on the other side's got a good point. I see it."
Well, we'll
think about it next time.
I'll tell you what.
Can't even do that.
If he learned his lesson, we won't know until his team gets to the Super Bowl and again
or playoffs.
I just can't believe I sat there with my fat butt not knowing the rules, and I don't believe
But that's kind of the thing.
Did you know the rules?
No, but
I did not. I'm bothered.
But that's what I'm getting at is. So now we go into overtime. Matt Steinmetz and Steiny Guru Johnson. We're watching overtime. Okay, now we're going into overtime. Hey, you guys know the rules are different, right? Yeah, no,
Big 12.
Well, Shanahan will say, yeah, I know. But it would just be like, oh, the rules are different? Well, okay, well, let's make a decision. Like you're making a decision right there, right then, based on whereas Andy Reid and the Chiefs had been thinking about this forever.
And their players knew.
Yeah. All right, 888-957-9570 is the number. Steiny Guru with you. We have a great show coming up today. We're going to get into some Warriors later.
Well, we have to.
At noon, we're going to have Ted Nguyen. He's an NFL staff writer for The Athletic. He's really, really good on X's and O's. He studies game film.
Man.
And I can't wait because the first thing I'm going to ask him is were Ayuk and Kittle and Debo not open, or were they open and Purdy didn't see him? He's the kind of writer and analyst that will have great answers to those kind of questions.